thought we were ready.
We did. I would like to call the Novi Board of Education regular meeting to order. It is April 14th. I want to welcome everybody here this evening. Thank you for being here. We will be going into closed session in a little while. So I just want to make a personal announcement. I do have a time limit tonight, so I don't want anyone to assume that when I leave this evening later that anything nefarious is going on. Paul will be taking over for me, because I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity for public comment. So if we can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam President?
Yes.
I have a point of order, please.
Sure.
I would like to move that our Board of Education amend tonight's agenda, and I would further move that we immediately consider our Board of Education offering the Novi Community School District Superintendent position to Dr. R.J. Weber.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, recommended by Mr. Smith and supported by Mrs. Hood. So what we're actually voting on is whether we will be adding this item to our agenda. Yes?
Trustee Ruskin, normally, I mean, this is kind of new for us, right? We have board governance policies that normally state that when we want to put something on an agenda, we give you and the superintendent a 48-hour notice. And the reason that we do that is so that we could prepare to have this sort of conversation. So, so that we're not blindsided, so that we can prepare for that sort of stuff. We have Robert's rules, certainly, but then, you know, folks have told me before that your board governance documents overrides Robert's rules. So I think that the motion is out of order, but I don't see that we have necessarily a parliamentarian here to say otherwise. But I certainly won't be supporting this tonight.
Okay. So anybody, so we have a motion on the floor about adding an item to our agendas, which is what is actually happening. So I think that we can, I'm going to say that we can vote on that motion, and anybody that's in opposition to having it added to the agenda this evening can certainly decline that. And then the next item on the list of things to do tonight would be approval of the agenda either as amended or approval of the agenda as presented.
Would anyone be offended if I just made a comment with regards to the motion?
You're welcome to.
I don't think that I'm bringing up anything that hasn't been discussed. I don't think I'm catching anyone at this table off guard. What I'm hoping to do is that we would have a little bit of a discussion in an open session as opposed to going into a second closed session without having either a public vote or any public discussion on the issue. In my opinion, in the email that went out to the community prior to our first closed session, it would appear that we had decided as a board to go the route of a search party versus indicating on that communication that there was a consideration of even promoting Dr. Weber. So I want to have it as a record of being public, of being open, and not making all of our decisions in a closed session. So that's why I made the motion.
So just for clarification, our closed session tonight topic is not in any relations to this. We are getting a legal opinion on another matter.
I understand that.
So there would not be a second closed session with a legal opinion on this topic, but thank you for that. So I think unless anyone has any other comments, then we can go ahead and take a vote. Mrs. Murphy, do you?
I'll make a comment. I want to clarify, we have not made a decision in
Correct.
closed session. I guess a non-decision is I am surprised at the motion, but I do not necessarily have a problem approving it. So,
Any other discussion before we take a vote on the motion?
Okay, the motion is to add it to the
Correct.
agenda? Okay.
Do you have any comments, Mr. Cook?
You know, I agree that we can have a motion to alter the agenda, and it can be supported, and it takes, and the board then votes on that. And then, usually motions, when they come later, allow for the discussion amongst the board. Yeah, I'm not prepared to discuss discuss a motion later, and, you know, that's why I'm prepared for the agenda that was presented, so I will not support this motion.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. If we are ready for a vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion fails. We will move to the next agenda item, which is approval of the agenda. If we can get support. Mr. Cook,
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
do we have a second?
Support?
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Mena. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-3. We will now need an action item to move into our closed session, which is attorney-client privilege. If I can get a motion for that, Mrs. Murphy?
I'll move that we move into closed session for the attorney-client privilege, Open Meeting Act, Section 8(1), subsection H.
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mr. Cook. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The board will now go into closed session. You guys can all stay in the room. We're gonna go into closed session in a different area with our attorneys, and we will be back as quickly as we possibly can. Mr. Mena, and we are out of closed session. We will continue with our agenda for this evening. Again, we are going to have an opportunity for public comment. I know we don't have any announcements. Our next meeting, though, is on Monday. We have an ad hoc superintendent search committee in this room. It's made up of board members, and the board members are myself, Mr. Cook, and Mrs. Murphy. So if you can join us again at 7:30 on Monday evening, that would be fantastic, and it will be live streamed as well. This is our first and only opportunity for public comments, and Sheila has this so tiny, I can't actually read the details on it. So hold on, I just want to read my little. Individuals who wish to address the board are to identify themselves, their address, and any organization they may represent. Individuals who wish to address the board to direct their comments to the entire board and not to individual board members. The superintendent's not here tonight, other school district employees or members of the audience. Behavior that is intemperate, abusive, defamatory, or discourteous, or that otherwise interferes with the orderly conduct and timely completion of the work of the board is prohibited. Audience participation at board meetings is limited to the portion of the meeting designated as public comment. At all other times during a board meeting, the audience shall not enter into discussion or debate on matters being considered by the board. A person may address the board on agenda or non-agenda items, as we have only one opportunity this evening. Please fill out a green card if you have not. If you fill out the green card and hand it to Mrs. Holly, she will get it up here to the board table. We randomly call people up to the microphone so as to not have a specific order or anything like that. This evening, how many do we have?
15.
Okay, we have 15 comments from the audience. We are going to have a 3-minute time limit. According to policy, board members cannot respond or enter into discussion with the audience during the meeting. Items not on the agenda do not permit board members to respond or discuss except to make factual statements. The board president may direct administration, who is not here, but certainly we will forward anything that we need to get to them, to investigate items and report back to the board or to individual citizens that request such. So that being said, Mr. Cook, if you can call up our first person.
Mrs. Thurman.
Good evening, board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here again today. I am commenting about the processes that have happened.
Can you state your name?
Punitha Thurman, 41294 Carriage Hill, 3 children in the district. I continue to be disappointed at the lack of public conversation about the decision to pursue a search or not a search. There have been some conversations on social media that have raised this question about whether or not we should do a search or not. Let me offer again, there are definitely some folks who think that the right path to go is to have a full and national search. Let me offer to you my opinions about why going in that direction at this time seems like an error of good judgment on the part of the board. We not only have 1, but 2 administrative positions to search for. 2 administrators are leaving within the span of a month that they have decided to leave. At a time when across the state, superintendent positions and educator turnover is at an all-time high. Competition for educators, including teachers, who are easily recruited away and who want to have their voices heard. And I have heard repeatedly from some teachers and administrators that they wished this board would have had an open conversation and chose to pursue maintaining RJ, not only because of his leadership, but because mostly they didn't want disruption. My question to the board is, did you ask? Did you ask your educators and the administrators in this district about their preference, given the very unusual circumstance that we're in? I would expect a board not only to be considering how to search for a superintendent, but the context and conditions under which you are searching for them. The other thing you should take under consideration is that it is noticed across the state that 2 administrators at once are choosing to leave our district. As I have shared with you before, I have the privilege of working with educators across the state and across the country. And over the last few days, I have gotten a number of texts and inquiries expressing their disbelief, one, that the district chose not to hire a superintendent who had been in the district for 12 years, well-regarded and well-positioned, but more so, they know and they are hearing and they are expressing a lot of wondering about what the conditions must be like in Novi at this moment. I know there is great interest in searching for a pool. I believe we are Novi and we are great, but I took a look, I don't know if you did, at the candidates who applied after a national search by Northville, who I'd consider fairly close to us. And they ended up with four candidates, one who was disqualified or sort of eliminated immediately, who came out from Illinois, three others, including our current assistant superintendent, who was finally selected. The other three was for the local area. I really hope you know what you're doing in this pursuit of a strong search at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Thurman.
Mrs. Madey?
I could be short or long. I can't remember. Am I allowed to talk about things that are not on? Like,
You
I can talk about
absolutely
anything.
are allowed to
Okay.
talk anything that's in the purview of the board.
Okay, so first thing I want to say is, well, I'm disappointed that some on this board panicked under pressure.
Name, yes, name. Name and address, please.
I think we all know, my name is Julie Madey, 50876 Chesapeake.
It's more for the recording. I'm
While I'm
sorry.
disappointed that some on this board panicked under pressure, I'm thankful that the majority showed calm and grace in a very, very difficult time for our community. So I thank you guys. I just wanted to bring up something because I've been out of commission for a while, and so I haven't been to many board meetings. And I just wanted to put on the record a couple of things that you guys voted on in the past, and it was regarding the PE credit. With regards to the PE credit being omitted, while I don't necessarily agree or disagree with it, I think the requirements are too relaxed to meet the standards. From my experience with my kids playing a JV sport versus a varsity sport, there was a big difference between the two. More importantly, having one kid that tested out of gym and one kid that took the gym class and loved it, I can tell you plain and simple. My son tested out in order not to pursue other interests, but rather to cram one more AP course down on his schedule. So in some ways, I see this new waiver as a disservice to the mental health of our kids, stressing them out even more by adding yet another college course to their credit, because we all know how colleges accept kids from Novi. Lastly, I wanted just to give a shout out to I know there was a discussion on peer-to-peer at one point where I missed. Wanted to give a shout out to our peer-to-peer program. For anyone that's not familiar with it, the program is a high school class that allows kids that have special needs to be put in classrooms with kids in the high school. They pair up, and it's a great program. And there will always be challenges with that program. I hope our district continues to encourage that program and make it a top priority. I can't think of another way in our community, any other way, to teach empathy to our children than to let them sit in a class and be a part of these kids' lives.
Thank you, Mrs. Madey.
Mrs. Kalusk, I hope I got that right.
Jennifer?
Good evening, Jen Kalusik. I'm the parent of 2 children in the district, and it's appropriate that I follow as the next commentator because I would actually like to thank the trustee for having the bravery and the courage and actually following the responsibilities of a trustee member by trying to discuss the most important job duty of this board in a public forum. So I would like to thank the trustee that made the motion, the trustee that seconded it, and the third trustee who voted in favor of it. Time is of the essence here. The unique nature of the circumstances in filling the superintendent position that we have been handed require us to act now and with due diligence, not to sit back and do a full and national search when we have the #1 qualified candidate right here, ready, willing, and able to take the reins. We have known for approximately 4 weeks now that Dr. Matthews is working out his contract with Rockford and will tender his resignation. The fact that one or more of the trustees on the board feels that they are, quote, not prepared to speak to this matter tonight shows an absolute failure of the responsibilities of a trustee. If filling the seat of the superintendent is the most important job you will have as a board, and after 4 weeks of knowing that this assignment is on your plate, you are not prepared to speak to the community that you serve, then maybe we should be thinking about whether you should be a trustee. Because if you're not prepared to speak of a fundamental duty that you have been elected to fulfill, how can we trust you on the smaller matters? You did not need an official resignation from Dr. Matthews to move. And I know that at the last board meeting, there was a statement of, we don't even have an official resignation letter yet. So implying what's the big deal on timing. I wrote a letter to you all this weekend indicating there's a very creative solution that should be obvious. You make a conditional offer of employment to the most qualified candidate who is sitting here ready, willing, and able to fill this position contingent upon the receipt of the resignation letter from Dr. Matthews. If that resignation letter never comes, hooray, because we get to keep Dr. Matthews. And then the offer letter to RJ is null and void, but we know that that's not going to happen. And so the next best business course of action, the smartest business decision, and the decision that is the smartest to protect our children and their education here is to make the next best qualified candidate that offer. And wasting time on a search for someone who we know is not going to, for something that we know is not going to yield a better candidate is a poor example of the fulfilling of your duties. I implore you to act with urgency as soon as possible to make RJ that offer.
Thank you.
Mr. Truax?
Jim Truax, 23891 Greening. So I'm relatively new to this. I saw this on social media. I'm surprised that two people have decided to leave so quickly. I saw some congratulations. I came here, I think 20 years ago when Dr. Dion was superintendent. Whole reason I came here were phenomenal schools. I moved from Northville to Novi. So I think if we look back in time, we did a search, found Dr. Matthews, worked out really well for maybe 12 years. So I'm in support of doing a full search for another person or another superintendent. I think if RJ wants to apply, then by all means, go ahead and do so. But I think looking at the circumstance, you know, two people have put you in a bad spot. You know, to go out and solicit your own or another job knowing that you could be the next superintendent is really quite poor, in my opinion. And I think that, you know, in this case, why would you not want to do a full search? It's like any other job, right? You can't assume that the next guy gets it automatically. So I think if he wants to be the next superintendent, by all means, apply for the job. You guys do your search. Maybe it pans out for him and he gets the job. So thank you, and thank you to the board for all the work you do. I think you guys are in a very hard position, so appreciate it.
Thank you. It's Betsy.
Betsy?
Hold on.
Bedoin?
It's Bodwine.
Yeah, your last name is,
I mean, I've been here like 100 times though. It's still Bodwine, and Bodwine every time. Betsy Bodwine, good evening, everyone. First, I would like to address the motion that was made earlier in this meeting. I appreciate the efforts that were made by 3 of this board's trustees in regards to creating a transparent environment for the superintendent search. I am aware there have been about 140 emails that have come into this board. 95% is my estimated amount, I've been told by 2 separate people, of what was in support of hiring Dr. Weber. And while I acknowledge there are more than 140 people in this neighborhood and in this city, it seems interesting to me that the board would disregard the community again. I would also like to address the process concern, since I do feel a lot of people in this space are leaning into process as an argument against continuity in our district. Regarding the motion that was made earlier today and the questions that were brought up at the board table about our the let me check what it was called, the governance documents for this board. In that document, which I reviewed while you all were in closed session, it says that what Mr. Smith did is very much allowed within your own document. And it says that items may be added to the agenda of any meeting by a majority vote by the members of the board. So while I appreciate that we should all follow the rules, and I think that's a great idea, I do also advise that this board maybe read the rules before we use them as an argument against doing what is appropriate in your position. Finally, I would like to say that I first learned that Dr. Matthews was interested in leaving and interviewing somewhere else over a month ago. And I imagine that the people at this board table are at least as well informed as me, since I'm just a parent here. And if that is the case, I am curious about the timing that we are suddenly able to start a search the day after Northville's deadline, which was made public and put in the newspaper. For people to say that this is just not personal and it's poor timing, I just don't think it's true. And as far as I'm concerned, you all have the authority to make the choices that you feel are appropriate, and by all means do so. But I do believe that as elected officials, you do have a right to, at the very least, have the courage of your convictions and just say, this isn't what we want. We don't want Dr. Weber, if that's what you feel. Because this, my hands are tied nonsense for over a month is just embarrassing us all. There's really no point in it. And it would make sense to just be honest about what your priorities are for this district. We've been led flawlessly for a decade by the team that is now leaving. And I would like to also say that when I spoke with Dr. Matthews, he told me that a position that a couple years back had 84 people apply had 15 or 16 this year. So I am curious where you think you are going to find two better candidates than the two you have just lost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Mitchner.
Tara Mitchner. Hey guys, so thanks for serving. I'll be as fast as possible. I have to pivot and prep, right? That's why you all have to be prepared too. When we're on boards, we don't know what's going to come across our desk, but we have to be prepared. I was disappointed to hear that we couldn't have an open and public conversation because of lack of preparation. You all should be prepared. I've had communications with you all. You've been talking about it. We've known about this for a while. So prep is important. Thank you, Tom, for at least making this open. Open is important when it's a public board. I served on a public board I have for 8 years. Willie had that seat before me, and he knows good and well that you can do a lot of things with a public board, right? That's super important. You know, you get to have an opinion. I don't have to agree with it. Nobody does. But I can tell you one thing. It needs to be public if it's a public board. I'm disappointed by a conversation that I had with who I think of as my friend, typically Danielle, yesterday, when she told me that what has been happening is okay. It's not public. It's not okay. This is a public board for a public school. I will say she also said, when I brought up the tweets that I've made, at Tara Mitchner, that's my Twitter handle, she said that I have a threatening and anonymous account. Let's be clear. That's offensive. I do not have a threatening and anonymous account. My account is for the public. I am an author, I'm a mental health professional, I'm a public speaker, a TED speaker, by the way. I've met everybody in this room tonight, and some of them I've met before because Dr. R.J. Weber helped me to meet them. Julie Madej, I met you, right, at the Parent to Parent Book Club with Dr. Matthews.
Can you please stop speaking directly to people in the audience based on our rules?
Danielle, I
Thank
met you at the Mental Health Alliance. I met so many people in this room because Dr. Weber brought us together. But you get to have an opinion not to hire him if you don't want to. I think he's number one. If you don't, that's fine. But we should talk about it. My issue, you want me to follow process. I just didn't do that. I'm sorry. Please apologize as well for you not following process. It's so important that our kids are watching. We need to treat everybody with respect, even if we don't agree with them. I don't agree with everybody in this room. I like to wear gold. You might think it's ugly. That's cool. You can have your opinion. But I think that it's important for us to talk and follow the rules. And I'm very disappointed that we haven't done that because we're not modeling for our kids what it looks like to do the right thing. That is my problem today. So I hope you hear me. I hope you don't accuse other people of having heinous accounts when they don't. That was very offensive, and I hope that I can get an apology for that. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Tara.
Mr. Madej.
It's Tara. Her name is Tara. Good job. I know.
David Madej, 50876 Chesapeake. Okay, first off, I actually, this is taped, so first off, congratulations to both Dr. Matthews and Dr. Weber for their new opportunities, which they pursued and achieved on their own volition. While it's no secret that I have some concerns related to transparency and divisiveness in the community, I do wish them both the best of luck in their future endeavors, especially Dr. Matthews, who personally, to me, has been open and receptive to feedback and viewpoints that may differ from his own belief. Second, thank you to the board members who did not succumb to the pressure applied by a vocal group of supporters for Dr. Weber. To be clear, the ability to express concerns or voice opinions is, of course, everybody's right, no issues with that. I would point out that their opinions do not represent all community members, including myself. I found whoever created the Twitter handle @RecallNoviBOE to be sophomoric and continuing to focus on the divisiveness that's in our community. I think it is ironic, right, that both Dr. Weber and Dr. Matthews, again, both who voluntarily pursued opportunities outside of the district, were selected as part of a comprehensive search process. Okay, imagine if that process was not employed by either of them. Yes, they would both be here today, but they would also have not been able to choose to do something different, which they both chose to do. Okay, they would have not been afforded that opportunity. Let's focus our attention on finding great candidates, no matter how big or small that candidate pool is, who are excited to lead Novi Community School District in the future. And again, thank you to the board members who maintain some control. I know it's very difficult. There's been a lot of hateful mail that's gone on in here, but not everybody agrees with everything. And we haven't always agreed on all the items, but we need to have a little civility in here. And we need to have a little bit of trust and a little bit less divisiveness. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Madej.
Mr. Woods?
DeJuan Woods, Berkshire Point neighborhood. Actually, civility and openness, that's exactly what I've been saying for a long time. I'm glad it's starting to echo. I say that the decision you're making is going to be a very tough one, and it started tonight, actually, with the revealing of the ad hoc group and the meeting that's going to take place on Monday. I think this is the opportunity for the neighborhood, for the community, for everyone who's concerned about this process to show up on Monday at this meeting and to be represented. I think this is the window that we're presented with, and we have to take advantage of it just to make sure that we're leaving all of our voices, we're putting all of our voices on the table. When I read the letter, the original letter that was sent out by one of the board chairmen that said an ad hoc committee was being developed but didn't have any names on it, there was great concern that what we try to talk about transparency. We want to be involved in the process as a community as much as we can, and we want to do the best that we can for our kids and for the kids in this community. And so it was good to hear that the members were named, and it was also good that there's an opportunity for the public to be there at that session. And I think that that is the first step in my mind. During the time, I don't want to say much more, but I will say that for all of us here, all of us who are listening, show up on Monday. If you have your time to speak, it's Monday. And whatever you all decide to do, if you truly give this committee the voice and you listen to the parents and the community, and we come to agreement that there's going to be a robust process that will be, I think, beneficial for this community's unity coming together, it's going to begin on Monday. So I thank you very much for that. And I'll say one last thing. There are other districts, there are other places. Those are other places. This is Novi. We are the ones that are going to solve our own problem. No one from the outside. We are the ones that are going to be the solution to our own district. So Monday is the day that we begin that process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Trumpy?
Hi, I'm Sharon Trumpy. The first thing I'd like to say is that I think that there's a difference between bravery and courage. I think bravery is kind of like an instinct. You see a child run in front of a car and you risk your own life to grab them out of the way. Courage, I think, requires more willingness and choice to do the right thing even when it's hard. And I appreciate the courage that I saw here tonight from Tom Smith. And I want to make really clear what the motion was. The motion was to amend the agenda to have a public discussion. So the 4 no votes that we heard from Paul Cook, Danielle Ruskin, Willie Mena, and Marianne Roney were voting no, we will not amend the agenda to have a public discussion about our superintendent succession plan. Who would think you would need courage to make a motion to have a public discussion in a public board in front of your community who's depending on you to serve our children in a public school? The next thing I want to say is that in addition to familiarizing yourself with your own governance and policy, which has been a repeated issue recently, I'd like to again encourage you to familiarize yourself with the Open Meetings Act. When I heard it said that there was not a decision made at that meeting, I think maybe there's some confusion about what constitutes a decision under the Open Meetings Act, because it does not require that you have a formal vote for it to be a violation of OMA. So if you, for example, did round the horn and collected opinions from each board member about whether they wanted to have a search committee or make an offer to a particular candidate, that's a violation of Open Meetings Act. If you have a meeting where your attorney offers a legal opinion and then you sit around and discuss if you're going to form a search committee or make an offer, and although you don't vote, you essentially decide to have a search committee because you announce it repeatedly in emails but have never discussed it, you've again violated Open Meetings Act. So I keep hearing this reference to we didn't make a decision, we didn't have a vote. I don't care if you had a vote. If you sat around the table and shared your opinions and that led to the emails from Danielle that specified that there would be a search committee and you did not discuss that in public, you have betrayed the public's trust and your position, and that disappoints me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mitchner.
Good evening, Board. Jason Mishner, Novi resident. So I think everybody in this room and probably those listening at home have a strong opinion on who or what they would like the board to do for the next superintendent. And I know everybody sitting at the board has their own individual feelings, but that is not what I wanted to discuss tonight. What I wanted to discuss tonight is a trend that I see as concerning to me as of late, and I think it's been brought to head by the fact that you now have to exercise your most important duty as board members, which is to fill an open seat in our top administrative position. And that trend that I see is you are a public body, so you need to make all decisions in your public and vote on them. And decision-making involves discussions. You are obligated to do that by the OMA, by law, and it's also in your own policies and procedures and in the bylaws. That said, I am confounded as to how you could have a direction you want to go in for this most important decision without a single discussion. To be clear, by your own documents, you have now had 3 public meetings and there has been 0 agenda items to discuss anything to do with the superintendent, not even close. So there's been nothing on the agendas. There's been nothing in the minutes that you discussed it. The closest you ever got was a couple of hours ago last night where a board member proposed that you put an agenda item on tonight's agenda to have a discussion. So in lack of any public discussion, any agenda item, I can't understand how you have a set direction to go in. I also don't understand how you would form a committee and set up a time to meet when, again, there's been no public discussion. So this is a trend I see with this issue, but I see it in other issues relating to DEI. I see it when we talk about other sensitive topics. I don't understand why a public board is basically acquiescing their responsibilities to have discussions in the public and make your views known and make votes. And honestly, I hear a lot outside of board meetings from the community and board members themselves about how they feel about decisions, and honestly, I do not care. If you don't say it in a public meeting, then it does not matter. Either way, no matter how you feel, regardless of whether you agree with me or not, I don't expect you to always vote my way or side my way. But I feel like I have a right, and so does everybody else in this room, regardless of how they feel, to hear how you feel and to hear how you are making decisions and to see you vote on those decisions and act in accordance to your feelings and beliefs. That is not happening. And this, the defining of the superintendent, however you proceed forward, just because you select a person, that's not going to resolve the issue. There is an issue here, and it's beyond this decision-making process. It's the fact that the board is not acting publicly. That is a problem. You are not a private board. You need to make your decisions in public, and that requires discussions in a public forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishner.
Mr. Schlesman?
The first thing I want to make clear is.
Could you state your name, please, for the
I am
recording?
not Julie Madej. Just because I had no idea who that was. My name is Rod Schlesman, which I'm prepared for. Address 100 Pleasant Cove Drive. I've been a resident here 40 years. So some of the comments I listened to I really agreed with, particularly, I won't name anyone, but I do support promoting Dr. Weber to continue Novi's progress, particularly towards full, encompassing education experience. Part of that is I like the direction the school is going. And so we're losing 2 people at the top, and we're not talking about it. And it's like, well, we better start somewhere. Anyway, I'm going to tell you just why I support Dr. Weber and why I think losing 2 people at the top is really tragic for this district. My expectations of education when my kids were in school was that they learn facts, processes, relationships, and the results of those things put together. That they be able to reason, they collaborate with others from various backgrounds, because that's what the real world is, and that they develop life skills. Those were my expectations. It wasn't that I wanted any thing trimmed out of education. I want the facts as known at the time, because when new information comes out, we learn new things. That's just part of life. I support continuation of teaching collaboration skills and taking into account your constituents, your classmates, your environment. And I do not want to return to the McCarthy days of others. I want us to all be inclusive and work together. So you guys have a big job ahead of you to try to fill these shoes, and you will not get perfection. You will get what you may be looking for, but it won't be perfection from anyone. Anyway, these skills must include communication, effective skills to build together, and recognize and acknowledge differences. And I think there are some people that are not really pushing or supporting those initiatives. I think they're very, very, very important. They support the facts. Last comment is Rockford had
Time's
open
up.
deliberations, and I hope you do the same.
Thank you.
Mrs. Seal?
Hi, good evening. I am Lisa Seal, 24466 Nottingham Drive. First, I'd like to voice my support for the board as they commit to an expansive and in-depth search for our next superintendent. Personally, I think this is a super exciting time and the opportunities are great, which is really fun. This would include any internal, of course, candidate that's qualified. Be happy to apply, that they're willing to do so, that'd be great. Anything less than a thorough search would be, that would broaden the gap in our already divided community. Only positive gains can come from a transparent process that includes community input. I think we can all agree on that. Instead of spouting my own opinion here, I will share what a few experts have to say about filling leadership roles. The Harvard Business Review published an article recently that states when a high-performing, beloved employee seeks other employment, the best thing for all is to let them go. It's best for them and best for the organization they leave behind. A quote from the article is, when an individual's motivations for leaving are outside their manager's control, using money or a promotion as incentive to stay becomes a short-term solution to a larger issue. The Michigan Association of School Board recommends this process. Prepare a timeline, solicit staff and community input, develop search criteria, post the role nationally and broadly, hold effective public group interviews, and vote. The School Superintendents Association states, open and thorough searches are most effective. When the role is posted, vetted, and the community is involved, the outcome is usually always positive. Conversely, when this decision is made in a silo, the superintendent, board, and community relationship is soured due to a lack of transparency. It dissolves trust with the community. And I'll just leave you with this quote. And again, this is from the School Superintendents Association. Board members and administrators come and go, but the community remains. So thank you for respecting our community in its entirety.
Thank you, Mrs. Seal.
Mrs. Mudge?
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak. My name is Sarah Mutch, 21552 Chase Drive. It's funny for not being here at all. Really starting to get a good streak going. So I wrote what I was going to say before I came here, and I was very angry when I wrote it. Not to say that I'm not still upset, but I might be jumping around a little bit, especially given the time limits. But what I wanted to say is the saddest part about this right now is that I feel like me standing up here and speaking my voice and the emails that I have sent out to the board and to each of you individually, none of it's going to make a difference. That's not how a democracy works, right? You guys are elected members of our community. You're here to serve for the betterment of our school district, for the community, and you're representing us. You're representing making decisions for my 3 kids, and everybody, thank you very much for your patience with them. It's always fun to bring 3 kids to a meeting, but you know, that's how we mom these days. So I'm up here, even though I'm not sure it's gonna make a difference, but I feel like I need to do everything that I can do to speak what I feel needs to be said. Most of my family is in education. I'm the one who's not in education. I went and and in talking with them, I understand a lot about what it takes to be a great leader. I've heard so much from my family on the west side of the state, just how recognized our 2 top leaders in our district, Dr. Matthews and Dr. Weber, are, how well they're respected, and what they're known for in terms of the innovation that they bring to education and the passion they bring. These are things that you don't find very often. And I agree, doing a national search, this is what we have to do because we've lost the top 2 candidates. They're gone. And you might be happy about that. I get the sense that you are, because I feel like the board has done this purposefully. And this is what breaks my heart, because I want to believe in the system. I want to believe that you guys are up there doing what is best for our kids. But I feel like this has kind of worked its way out just the way you wanted it. RJ gets the offer, and now all of a sudden you're going to talk, even though there's no resignations. I've seen some message that's gone out, an email that was sent out about an ad hoc committee, and that even though we don't have resignations, we can start talking about the process for hiring a new superintendent. Why wasn't this done day 1 from getting back from break when we knew officially that Dr. Matthews was going to be leaving us? It's frustrating,
Novi is an educated community. I feel like you are trying to pull one over on us, and you guys are all smart people. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mrs. Rahman?
Sujata Raman. I have 2 kids in the district. To say that I'm disappointed at the actions of this board right now is an understatement, but for the purposes of my comments this evening, we'll go with disappointed. Some people have commented that this is a difficult decision that you face. I couldn't disagree more. In an environment where good teachers and administrators are burned out and leaving the field of education altogether, it is insane that this board has failed to do everything in their power to retain a well-liked, well-respected, passionate, and effective leader with a proven track record. All hiring decisions should be this easy. Earlier this week, I sent an email to a member of this board and received a response that stated in part, quote, know that the voices of a few stakeholders don't carry more weight in our district than the whole, as you imply. To that board member, forgive me for my clumsiness. It was not my intention to imply that a majority of stakeholders are being ignored in the favor of a few. I'm outright saying it. You have heard from parents, teachers, and administrators, a wide cross-section that is truly representative of the unique diversity that is our community. Even Dr. Matthews has publicly stated that he would like to see Dr. Weber stay in Novi, and you are ignoring all of them. If you were truly committed to listening to the community, decisions about how to proceed would not have been made behind closed doors without public discussion or vote. I know that there's word that there people have said that no decision has been made, but the communications that have been made by this board state otherwise. And even if that were true, the opportunity today to put it on the agenda would have been a public discussion. If you were truly committed to listening to the community, given that so many stakeholders have voiced their support in favor of retaining Dr. Weber, you would have done everything in your power to ensure that he was at least considered as a candidate in this search. To be clear, while I genuinely like Dr. Weber and think that he is the best one for the job, my issue is bigger than that. I understand that some of you do not agree with the majority position, and that's okay. I can respect that. What I can't respect is allowing your personal views to override your duty to the community as elected officials. You can say that you're listening to us all you want, but as I tell my kids, actions speak louder than words. Especially when the voices of the few resulted in immediate action related to the Sex Education Advisory Board not more than a month ago. And that too was at the behest of somebody on this board. Per your own operating procedures, the only requirement when dealing with superintendent succession is that the board shall actively seek the best qualified and most capable candidate. You have failed to do that, and as the parent of kids who will suffer from your indecision, I'm furious.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Mr. Betts?
Good evening, I'm Mike Betts. Away we go. The CEO of Under Armour had a quote, and it said, trust is put together in drops and lost in buckets. You've got a problem right now. Your problem isn't your superintendent. Your problem is you now have a community who has no confidence in you, no trust in you by how you've conducted yourself. They don't trust you. And you've given them good reason not to trust you. This whole specter of what you've done behind closed doors and your lack of transparency, even though you touted transparency when dealing with social issues in previous meetings. I'm sorry to say, you've got a problem that's bigger than this, and it's not going to go away with just the superintendent selection. You put yourself in this position. I was here last week saying directly to you, it's avoidable, and you could have done it. You could have called a meeting, you could have had it. You all live in Novi, not hard to get together. And you chose not to. You cannot hide behind process when the process doesn't support your argument. I'm sorry. This is your fault. and you're gonna be held accountable for your decision. And you better find a better candidate than the ones that you let walk out your door. And the community's gonna be watching and will hold you to account. The majority of you are my friends, and it is painful for me to stand here and say this to you, that you no longer bear the trust of the community. But you better face it, and you better be ready to answer for your actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Betts.
Mrs. Sergumstrom? Did she leave? She left. Couldn't pronounce her name when she was coaching my son in soccer, and I still can't. Mrs. Mahoney?
Marion Mahoney, 26 years resident of Novi. I live at 24108 Westmont. My two daughters have successfully been through the school system, and they are thriving because of it. My husband and I have lived here for 26 years. We could have moved out of this community after our daughters were launched, but we chose to stay here because we love the community, we care about the community, and purely, from the wallet standpoint, my investment here really has held strong in part and because of this great school system. So I really care. I'm invested in this community. I've been following the proceedings in the public discussions around the issue of replacing Dr. Matthews. So I don't want to recount the history of the events, the community, and the board. You won't know all the minutia that's taken place, the painful minutia. So I do want to share with you how I view what's taken place. Over the past 3 weeks, the situation has gone from something that was manageable to something that now is a crisis in many ways, primarily in trust. The responsibility of that escalation falls squarely on this board, and primarily on the leadership of the board. At the time that Rockford offered the position to Dr. Matthews, it was public knowledge that Dr. Weber was also to be the top candidate for our neighbor school right to the south of us. We knew that there was a very high risk that another top leader was going to be lost. Losing one top leader is manageable. But when you lose two, that becomes a crisis. So 3 weeks ago, the situation was manageable. The bylaws provide the board all kinds of flexibility and leeways to really manage these types of situations. Very specifically, they provide you that flexibility so that you can act in the best interests of our community. And by acting in the best interest, that means moving with a sense of urgency that's appropriate for the situation. None of that happened. None of that happened. So the board ignored the risk. They ignored the community who were raising the alarm. This is going to happen. They're running around telling you there's a disaster going to happen. And it was ignored. So now the risk has become a reality. And the situation has gone from manageable to crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Crumpkin?
Amy Kropkin, 40308 Guilford. I have two children in the districts. You've heard from everybody here, so I'm going to give you an educator's point of view because nobody's spoken from an educator's point of view. I've been in teaching for 20 years. I've spoken before in my comments about people leaving education in droves. We're losing people at an unprecedented rate. 43% of teaching jobs right now across the nation are going unfilled. 55% of educators say they're seriously thinking of leaving. The reasons they give for leaving are being overworked, underpaid for their level of education, a number of reasons, you've seen it all. And the number one reason is they do not feel supported or listened to by the administration or district when speaking up about what they need. Many teachers wrote to you over the past few weeks to express their feelings of frustration with your inaction to promote Dr. Weber to superintendent. They spoke at meetings, wrote emails describing how Dr. Weber influenced their teaching and career, how inspirational his leadership was, and how stressful a new super would be. With your inaction and petty politics, you've shown your teachers that you don't care one bit about the stress that this whole situation will cause, and you don't listen to them when they tell you what they need. There have been 55 teachers that have left the district this year alone in comparison to 23 last year. I have no doubt your actions this week will cause more to leave. In the past, teachers would stick out a situation they might not have been happy in, because if you left, you would have to start over at the bottom of the salary pay scale and were not credited years of service. With the teacher service shortage, this is no longer the case. Districts are clamoring for teachers and would love to snatch up some Novi excellence. At this point, the damage you've caused is done. As an educator, I've been through district superintendent changes several times. This board has no idea what you're in for and what you did to yourselves. You are down 2 admin, with a looming date of July 1 being without a leader at all. The search process, if done well and thoroughly, because you probably, none of you know this, takes several months. We don't have several months. So my huge concern now is that you're going to speed up the process, and we'll end up with leaders that are not the best we could have found if you would have acted sooner. The community is going to remember this. They remember that you had the chance to keep top admin in the state, and you let them walk. They will remember that you didn't listen to them. You didn't listen to the teachers, the students. And if our kids' education is affected or our property values do begin to decrease, we will remember it and that you were responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crumpkin. We don't have any more cards up here, so I don't know if anybody has one that they didn't give to Sheila. If not, okay. No, sorry. I just saw someone pick one up. That's why I was like putting that out there, so. It's fine, and if anyone else would like to pick up a card, we want to be fair to everyone.
Yeah, Marina Martinenko, last second decision to speak here. So I just want to say, and use my voice in support of the board. I feel for you. You're in a difficult situation, and I think that it's clear you have a difference of opinion in the group. Some people want you to conduct the search, while others want you to offer it to RJ. So because you have a difference of opinion, that's the irresponsible thing to do, is to pause. I don't see how we don't have the time. We have several months till the start of the next school year. So I think you are fulfilling your responsibility to serve your community by following the process, and I thank you for that. I think that you also need to know you are respected, you are supported as elected officials. You have our support. Just one fact I want to bring up. So we have conducted a search for Deerfield superintendent a few months ago, right? We had more than 70 qualified candidates that applied. 25 highly qualified. We brought 6 to interview. We selected an excellent principal. That was for a principal job. I don't see how we will not have a great selection for a superintendent or assistant superintendent position. Thank you.
Thank you. Please make sure you fill out the card so that Mr. Cook may have record of that. And we received one more.
Mr. Martinez?
Hi, good evening, Board. Aaron Martinez, 28-year resident of Novi, graduate of Novi High School. I'm really here tonight. I mean, it seems that most of the decisions about this issue have already been made. But I just want to add my voice to the chorus that I wholeheartedly support the board following the current policy that it has, which is to use the due diligence at your own discretion to determine the path that this district is supposed to take. In that regard, I think it's important that we understand and appreciate the fact that we have a superintendent, assistant superintendent here in this district, highly coveted, highly sought after by a number of districts. And my understanding, I don't have any firsthand knowledge of this, but my understanding is, it's not like Dr. Weber has been out there looking for jobs left and right. It seems like this was poor timing and awkward timing, as I know it's been said. And I would just echo, some of the folks who have mentioned, the support that he has from our teachers in our community. I got quite emotional at the last meeting, hearing my former teacher, Mr. Kowalski, come up here and speak about his work with Dr. Weber and the work that they've been able to do together to help kids who were falling behind in math. I'll admit to you right now, I was one of those kids, okay? And it's because of the efforts that administrators like that had in this district that folks like me have a future. We are able to see a path for ourselves just outside of the city of Novi and outside of this district to have a career that we can be proud of and hopefully make this community proud. I also just want to speak with my last minute and 20, I think there's been a lot of talk about transparency, accountability, and responsibility. And I think it's shared not just with this board, but members in our community as well. But I want to make sure that as we move forward, that this board does not just treat those as empty words, that you actually act on accountability, you act on the responsibility you have in this district, and that you make sure that you're being fully transparent. I'll be honest, I wouldn't use the word transparent with anything that I've seen out of this board in the last several weeks. And it's been disappointing because I know many of you well, and I don't believe that that's your intention, but I believe you need to do better. I think you need to do better for this community, especially in light that we have a potentially ticking time bomb with an investigation that's still unknown to this community. If there's a teacher or an administrator or somebody in this Novi community who is potentially being questioned of doing harm to a child, this community needs to know about it. This community needs to find out all of the facts on that. And while I understand and I appreciate that attorney-client privilege is something you need to hold on to, you need to find out a way to make sure that information and those facts are available to this community. Because to not do so, that's an abdication of your duty, in my view. And I hope that we can get some true transparency from this board in the coming days ahead. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, that is all the green cards we have up here. So as stated before, our next meeting is Monday, and that will be here in this room at 7:30. And if I can get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Support. Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mrs. Roney. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.